Jen Palmieri in the latest episode of Long Play, your podcast. You sat down with the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in Mississippi, Scott Cullum. Let's take a look at part of that conversation.
I take on corruption no matter who does it because I understand we have to build trust in our government. We have to build trust in our elected officials. And what I'm offering the people is not just to be another Democratic senator. I'm offering them to be Mississippi's senator, somebody that fights to make their life better. If you actually have been paying attention to Mississippi, you will see that we're ripe for a victory. And the conditions are perfect because we have corruption that's costing Mississippians. We got a Senator, Cindy Hyde-Smith, that's scared to show up, who's voting against our interests. And we got a candidate, God willing, that understands how to win.
DSCC made $40 million in investments for Black, brown, Asian American voters in Senate races, and they did not give any money to the state that has the highest percentage of Black voters, the state of Mississippi. What do you think that's about?
Well, I'll tell you, Mississippi, we're a state that's always had to do a lot with little. You talk to Brandon Presley, he got within 27,000 votes of winning, right?
And you broke the supermajority.
We broke the supermajority in the state Senate without very much attention. Look at our primary. No media attention. Absolutely nobody paid attention to my primary. We increased turnout 90% over the past Democratic Senate election.
Okay.
Without the attention of the national media, without a bunch of money being spent in our state, we're used to being ignored. Yeah. And what we want is people that understand that our country cannot succeed if places like Mississippi don't get attention, dignity, and what they deserve. When Mississippi has done well, our country has done well. When Mississippi has been ignored, our country has suffered for it. And if people across the country care about our party being a 50-state party, I mean, how could you not compete in a place like Mississippi? That's what's astounding to me. And it's because they've just been conditioned not to care. And we have to change that, because if we don't, we're going to continue to not be a party that represents working people.
All right, Jen, I mean, we were watching and reporting all morning on the polls, how Trump is doing in a lot of states. Is he right, though, about that change? And can they make that change?
Yeah, Mississippi has done a lot in the last couple of years to build up infrastructure. It started with Brandon Presley's race for governor. He came very close to winning. They've done more infrastructure investment, and then they have a really good candidate with Scott Cullum, who's a county prosecutor in Columbus, Mississippi, just objectively a really good candidate. There's a theory you just have to get Black turnout up by 4 percentage points, have 0.25% of white voters in the state vote for a Democrat, and that's the margin of victory there. I mean, it's just like Mississippi is just right there for the taking. It's not an expensive state to spend money in to win an election. And Cullum, Trump, even in Mississippi, Trump is not popular. Cullum is a very good candidate. And Cindy Hyde-Smith is just, I mean, he's right about this. That senator is just nowhere, not campaigning at all, just kind of taking it for granted. It does feel like Mississippi's there for the taking.
So, Maggie, we know you have to go. One final question for you. We talked so much about how this Trump term is all about just what he wants, and that includes, of course, the physical redevelopment of Washington, D.C., but also his pet projects like the tariff plan. And now we have this trade war with Canada, which we're talking about the U.S. Senate. Maybe it doesn't matter to Mississippi so much, but it sure does some other Senate seats up there. Maine, Wisconsin, Michigan, anything in the upper Midwest. What are people around him saying about this approach right now?
This is the biggest example of the personalist nature of this second term, John, and how radically different it is, this one from term one. I realize certain aspects of chaotic decision making can look the same, but it's really not. The USMCA was his deal. It was his trade deal in term one. He promoted it. He talked about how great it was. Then he came back and decided actually it wasn't a very good deal, wanted to try to renegotiate it. It was up for review. It is now not being renewed. And you have this new tariff war, although it's not directly related. But this is something that does not make sense to average voters. This is something that just re-injects tariffs into their lives at a time when costs are still very high. The people around the president, again, are basically trying to scaffold what he wants while trying to do things that can help their party. This is not a good example of it. And you saw with this one where Mark Carney in Canada said that there were demands made by the Trump administration that were something of a squeeze. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that basically it was more heads the U.S. wins, tails Canada loses. This is not what the preference would be for the administration to be talking about, although I guess the upside for them, John, is it's not talking about Iran. So if you look at it that way, it's better.